Let's take a closer look at the definition of aliases in Bash. So we already saw that there is a built-in command alias that's going to just list for us all the aliases that have been defined in our current shell session. Well, now what we're going to talk about is defining our own aliases, because that can be convenient. As you can guess already by just taking a quick look, a superficial look at this table here, sometime with aliases you can substitute with a short command something that is quite long. Okay, so this first alias here that is defined is defined to the name alert. So to run that, all I have to type is alert, and you can see that what is run is in essence, a mini script. It's a one-line script. It entails a lot of syntax that we haven't covered yet. Okay, so by the end of the course, if you look back at this, you'll be much more comfortable interpreting it. But right now, yeah, there's just too much for us to give you even an overview. But suffice is to know that there are many different commands, and there's logic, testing things and determining which command we need to execute based on the results that come of the test. Okay, so it's really like a mini one-line script that is really daunting to read, but it's efficient, and you can just call it by typing alert. So to be able to have any sort of meaningful discussion about aliases, we need to also talk a little bit more about the structure of external commands in the shell. So for example, ls is a great external command. So ls, we're going to use it as an example, accepts options. What are options? Well, generally options are the things that follow the symbol. So this is a minus, also referred to as hyphen, also referred to as dash, depending on how people want to pronounce those things. Okay, so when you say ls dash, let's say L, and you execute that, you're executing the ls command. So you can see that if I was just running ls command, the data that is used by ls is everything that's in my current working directory. So it's going to show me that there is a subfolder named desktop, a subfolder named documents and downloads, and so on and so forth. So in both cases, you see the same desktop, downloads, document. You see the same data is pretty much there. So ls doesn't lie or doesn't change what it's really telling you, but it can tell you about this data in different formats and with more or less detail. So for example, here when I use -L, I invoke the long option. That's what the L stands for. So I want an output for ls that is long, that is very detailed. So you can see that for each folder or file that ls finds in the current working directory, it's giving me a lot of information about who the file belongs to in terms of username, who the file belongs to in terms of group name. So it just so happened that every user by default has a group that contain only that user and that has the same name as the user. So that's why you see my username here repeated twice for each file. Then it's going to tell me time of last modification or access. It's going to tell me information about the size. It's going to tell me about information on the permission assigned to that file. And we're not going to look into detail in those fields. We're going to cover that thoroughly when we deal with the Linux file system. Okay, but for now, the important points, what is relevant is to know that, okay, options are available to commands, and generally we write them with a dash followed by one letter. So there are different such options. So again, we're going to soon look into how to access the manual page for just about everything that's available on your Linux system. And I don't ask you to memorize by heart all of those things. There are some options you are going to end up memorizing because you use them a lot. That's fine. Otherwise, I'm going to teach you very soon how to find information in what is called the online manual, and that's what you are going to use to pretty much find the option you need for a specific task. You're not going to memorize hundreds and hundreds of options for each single external command you're learning to use on your system. But here, for example, the option -A that stands for all is going to list all of the files and folder I had before, plus a bunch of files, or it could be folder, here we go, an example of folder, whose name starts with a dot. So the funny thing about Linux and Unix in general is that if you name a file or a folder and the first character of that name is a dot, that's perfectly legal. But that means that by default, when you do a ls, you don't want to see that folder or that file. It's a way to hide the file very easily by just putting a dot as first character in its name, file or folder. But it's sometimes you want to see exactly what's there, so you can do ls-a. And now you see everything, okay, including the dot and dot dot, which are special files that exist in every single folder on your system. And we're going to discuss a little bit more about them when we deal with navigation, okay, from the command line. But right now, let's just treat these as two separate cases, and we have regular files and regular folder, and then we have files and folder that are also regular, but that are just hidden from the basic ls command. Okay, you have to type ls-a to see them. So we just learned about two options for the ls command, -l, -a. As you can guess, there are a ton more. Okay, but what's important is now we are going to talk about the general syntax, and this applies to just about any command. I can do ls-l and -a. So that means I want to use both options. So I have the long format of output, that give me all that information about permissions, ownership of the file, etc. And I have also the -a option that forces ls to also show me information about the hidden files and the hidden folder. So I can combine those things, right? I said -a-l, I could have said instead -l as second option, -a as first. It doesn't really matter, because in that case, you can look at the option as toggle switches, okay? I'm calling ls, I'm asking it to list what's on my current working directory, in my current working directory, and I toggle on the option, give me long information, and I toggle on the option, give me information about everything, including hidden folders and files. So whether I toggle one or the other option first or last, doesn't really matter. The commands also allow you to specify option with a single hyphen, dash, or minus symbol, and putting the letter corresponding to the option one after the other. So for example, ls-la gives me the same result. Similarly, you guessed it by now, ls-al, same result. Okay? So this is nice. This is working only because by convention, all of the options that you can toggle with a dash symbol like that, they are one letter. So that's fine. But there are other type of options you can use with commands. And those options can be multiple letters. For example, there is a very useful option that you're going to get to know very well over the course of this semester, is --help. Okay, so --, no space, and then the word help. If you call that, you get a lot of information. Okay, you get pretty much a few pages full of very concise information, a reminder of all the options available for the ls command. So it gives you here the syntax. This is how you use ls. You type ls, you specify one or more option, and then you specify what you want to list. And if you don't specify anything here, then it's going to by default look at your current working directory and list everything there. Okay? So, and this is the meaning of all the options. Dash lowercase a mean all, dash uppercase a mean almost all. So that's one thing that I'm assuming most of you already picked up, by now, but the shell, like most things under Linux and Unix, is case sensitive, which means that if I spell ls, if I go back here and instead of typing ls, I type ls, well, that's not going to work. It's not the same thing. Okay, so same thing with option. If I do -a, I get a behavior. If I do dash uppercase a, and that's actually also a valid option, then I'm going to get a different behavior. Like, for example, you can notice here that I do not list the dot and dot dot special entries in my current working directory. Okay, so back to what we were talking about, that dash dash help is really, well, quite helpful, right? If I was trying to specify that I want to use a help option like so, that would not work. That would not work because if I use a single dash, that means that I'm referring to the single letter option system. So in this case, LS would see dash help as if I typed dash E dash H, sorry, dash E dash L dash P. Okay, same thing. It understands the dash H option, it does something, I don't know what, but then it finds a dash E option and it says, whoa, I don't have a dash E option. That's obviously not what I meant. So this is why we have those two notation. The single dash, single hyphen, single minus sign is there for one letter option. And then if you have option in a command that are actually words, well, this is how you're going to type them. Okay, dash dash, and then the word, and then a space. And if you want to use other option after again, then you would have to separate them like so. All right? So it doesn't make sense to call help twice, but I'm just illustrating the general syntax. So now that we have all of that stuff out of the way, what else can we talk about? Well, we were talking about alias, and we were talking about the fact that most of those aliases here that are defined are just a way to type with a short notation, something that can be actually quite huge, like this one-line script, or something that is just repeated often. For example, if I don't have this alias defined, my LS by default is not going to show colors. So I like to see actually folders in a different color, files in a different color, and so on and so forth. It helps me identify things. So instead of having to type all the time ls dash dash color equal auto, and by the way, a little tidbit of syntax, when you have those word option, you can append an equal sign and pretty much pass a value to them. So you are saying here, I want to use a color option of ls, and that color is going to be determined automatically. Okay. Well, instead of having to type all the time ls dash dash color equal auto, I want to just be able for it to be the default behavior of ls. So what I do in this case, I define an alias, and I give this alias the same name as the command ls. So when I type ls, instead of the shell going immediately and trying to find the ls external command, first it replaces the alias ls by what I said it meant, and then it executes the external command. So there is another built-in command that is interesting and relevant to all of this. It's an alias command. So if I do an alias ls, and now I type alias, you can see that the ls alias has been removed from my current list of alias. So now if I type ls, well, the colors are gone. So if I want them back, I would have to redefine my alias by saying ls, and I use the single quote here, very important. Okay. Again, this is a huge topic, again, the use of quotes in Bash, so we'll talk more about that, but for now, please just trust me, use single quote here. And if I do ls dash dash color equal auto, I'm pretty much redefining that alias that I had, and now when I type ls, it's interpreted first as an alias, replaced by this, ls dash dash color equal auto, and this is then executed and identified as being the ls external command. So sometimes you want to overwrite the name, so you want to use the name ls, so that becomes kind of it's kind of a way of making it the default behavior for the ls command, okay, to use those options. But sometimes you want to create aliases that are just your own aliases. For example, ls dash dash help. That one is not really useful, okay, but I'm just trying to illustrate something here. So I'm creating a new alias. You can see that it's listed now at the bottom of my table. And all it does really is when I type my ls, it calls ls with dash dash help. So usefulness of that is at the very least arguable, okay, so, but that's just illustrating the syntax of what we can do with those alias. So we talked about pretty much the alias and alias system. We talked about the syntax for one letter option and multi-letter entire word option. The last thing that I would like to actually illustrate here is the ability to run more than one command on a line. And this is something that also has to do with aliases, okay? Let's say, for example, that I want to do something like I want to display the date, okay? And then I want to display this is a good day, okay? But I want to do both in a single line. I can do that, no problem. Date, semicolon. So the semicolon is used here like you have used it in most programming languages, okay? That is a way to separate statement. So I am telling the shell, hey, there are two things here I want you to do. I want you first to execute the command date, whether it's a built-in, whether it's an external command, I don't care. And then, whether or not that command succeeded, I want you to execute another command, which happens to be, in this case, the echo built-in. So this is what's happening, okay? The date command execute, and you can see it goes to the next line just because this is the way date works, okay? It displays a date and then display a new line. And then I chain after that, echo, this is a good day, this is what happens. So I can have multiple commands like that, chain one after the other in sequence on one command line. And that means that, of course, I can also do this as an alias. So stuff, I'm really original here with name, and I'm putting my single quotes around the whole thing. All right, and now when I type stuff, there we go. I can have like a more complex command line actually being executed. We call those like one-liners, you know, one-line commands or scripts. What else? Well, so there's another pattern that you're going to encounter often. It's a chaining command, but only as long as they succeed. So we're going to go back and study that syntax in more detail when we do scripting, but for now I'm just going to introduce the syntax very superficially and get you to the point where you are operational using it in this context. But you're going to see that there's more to that syntax than I'm letting out right now. So let's say that I type date and then echo. It worked. All right, so stuff. No. This is an exclamation mark. This is exclamation mark playing with me because they have a meaning in shell. So I'm not going to use exclamation mark in this example. Let me erase that. So date and then echo, it worked. So all right, so this is great. Okay, so I just did what I already did before. Okay, but now let's say that I try to use date with an option that doesn't exist. Well, that date fails, but then the semantic of the semicolon is, I don't care if it failed. I'm going to the next step and I'm going to execute the next command. Well, sometimes that's not what you want, okay? Sometimes you want to execute the next command in the chain only if the previous one worked. How do you know if it worked or if it didn't work? Well, when you call date, okay, a little bit of magic here. If I do an echo, if I ask my shell to do echo $? So dollar is used for shell variables. Okay, we're going to cover that very soon. But for now, let's just follow along for this example. $? is a special variable in the shell that's going to tell me how the last thing that the shell tried to execute went, how the last external command that the shell tried to execute on my behalf completed. So 0 means okay. So date executed, displayed its result. Date returned actually a value to the shell that was a 0. It's called an error code, okay? And the shell is aware of that value, so it can even display it for me if I use that special notation echo $? So I can verify like this that the date command, external command, executed correctly. Just to show you what happened when things are not going so well. If I try to use date with an improper option and date fails, then when I do echo $? I get a 1. So 0 means everything went okay. Generally, a value different from 0 means something went kablamo. All right. So there is this internal system that allows the shell to know when it runs an external command on your behalf, whether it worked or not. Well, we can use that to our advantage. The way we do so is by using the syntax ampersand. And some of you are going to pick up on that and say, well, this looks oddly familiar. It looks almost like the logical AND operator in my insert here name of favorite programming language. You're right, that's exactly what it is. This is a logical AND operator for the bash. And just like it happens in other programming language, the bash has a way to evaluate its logical AND operator that says, well, as soon as something returns false, I stop evaluating my Boolean expression. So in this case, if date returns an error code that is interpreted as false, which means something went wrong, so that would be anything different than 0, then I'm going to stop evaluating the whole Boolean expression. So by using a side effect of how bash and other programming language evaluate Boolean expressions, we can use those Boolean connector here, operators, to chain commands. But this time, that means that if the first command in this example fails, then the second does not get executed. Let's see. So in this case, date did its work, returned an error code that was 0, okay, which means everything works. So the shell says, okay, the first command I was able to execute successfully. Now I'm going to execute, so you could read it and then, okay, that's how you could read that double ampersand symbol. And then I'm going to execute the second command. And whether it works or not, that's fine, okay? I don't have any other AND logical operator here, so I don't care. Now, the other side of that example is if I try to use an option, for example, that is not allowed, that is doesn't exist, okay? Yeah, I can use the same keyword, no problem there. So what's going to happen? Well, date dash dash woof is going to return a 1, okay, like it did before. So the shell is going to pick on the fact that it tried to execute an external command for you on your behalf, but it didn't quite work out. And so therefore, because we didn't use a semicolon here, we use a double ampersand symbol, the logical AND, it's not going to and then display it worked, okay? So what we're saying here is run the date, and then if it works, display it worked. And as you can see, that's a way here to say, no, this is not going to work, okay? So this is something that I introduce here because one, it's a very common pattern. You're going to see people using that a lot. And as you can guess, this is something that you would want probably to put also in aliases, okay? So the same way that here we try to alias, you know, this two-part command because we didn't want to have to type all of this every single time. Well, we did a sequential execution without caring if the first command actually worked or not. Well, the same way we can replace this semicolon by a double ampersand, and we're going to have this execution where all the next command execute only the previous one actually worked. And that's pretty much it for the topic of aliases.